Well, man, I'm looking forward to getting into retro groove. Thanks for taking a minute out today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Really
Yeah,
appreciate you.
yeah, you bet. So before we get into the album, I want to know, surviving COVID was a big deal for all of us, especially musicians. There was so much pivoting and rearranging that had to go on. How much of getting through that time period has influenced either this album or what you're doing now as a musician?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, when I realized, um, probably around the same time we all did, about that third or fourth week of March, that not only was this gonna be, serious business that we're dealing with, but also it's not gonna be short, you know. That we're not gonna come back in a month or 2 months and everything's gonna be back to normal. So at that time, I kind of, not, I wouldn't say I had an epiphany necessarily, but I just kind of had a realization. I'm about to have a lot of time on my hands, and this actually is an opportunity for me to really work on some things musically that haven't necessarily had the time to really go in depth about with regards to my technique. So I really dedicated, probably as much time and energy as I ever had into practicing and studying over, that time, especially that first year and a half where everything was pretty much shut down. And I made some pretty significant strides just in my own playing with regards to technique and concept. And then it also gave me the opportunity to really work on a lot of the music. I don't know if I would say necessarily that the what was happening with the world and COVID had a significant effect on the kinds of music I was writing in terms of like the tone of it, if it was dark or anything like that. But I just think it the fact that it was happening gave me the opportunity to work on some things in depth that I may not have otherwise had the ability to do. So hopefully that answers the
Yeah,
question.
it totally does. So this is your third album, Retro Groove 2. It's really honing in on the 80s. Talk to me a little bit about how the idea for this album hatched and ultimately how you feel about it now that it's been out for a week.
Yes, sir. So the idea came uh, after I did my first album, which was more of a traditional jazz album in terms of, it was a lot of originals and a few, arrangements I did of other jazz musicians' tunes. And for the next album, I was kind of trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? I could keep going in that direction, but I always, in the back of my mind, was thinking about, I had this idea, and people have done it to some extent before with regards to taking more popular music of the last, 30 or 40 years and trying to recreate it within in a jazz context. But a lot of times, when I heard other people do it, it was more akin to just an instrumental version of the song. It didn't. It, to me, there was a lot that was lacking with regards to the jazz component of it, and the sound, and the concept, and the stylistic things that were happening. So I really was always curious: is it possible to do some of the music of the last, 30 or 40 years, and make it kind of more authentically and honestly jazz with regard to, how we're approaching the music? And I also felt that, that's one way that, it's a way to connect folks to jazz that may not be your traditional jazz listener, by giving them some material that they're comfortable with, or that they're familiar with. And so, it was hard initially to me. I had to really search for songs that had a core foundation, that I wouldn't have to rewrite the whole tune, or we wouldn't have to rearrange everything so it's unrecognizable. Because I feel like that's what happens sometimes too. Is somebody's like, I want to do this Beatles song, but they change it so much and they rearrange it so much that if you're a Beatles fan, like my mom would have no idea that that was a Beatles song. You know, it just sound, oh, that's a jazz song. No, mom, that's I Want to Hold Your Hand. You know, but she has no clue. So, and then, you know, once the first album, I felt like I was happy with it. Then the second album was just kind of a natural, progression with regards to continuing that concept and trying to, get more even in depth with, and the saxophone player on the record, Miguel Alvarado, arranged all this stuff with me. And so far, you know, I'm really happy with the album. I think we straddled that line between keeping the spirit of the original tunes intact, but also not really altering what we would do in a traditional jazz context in terms of how we play or the sound, the actual sound and feel of the music.
So, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album? What's your ultimate hope?
I hope that, you know, I guess simply, you know, I hope they get enjoyment out of it. But first and foremost, I hope it can, you know, be, you know, the same thing when I listen to music, it evokes, you know, some sense of joy, some sense of peace. It, you know, it evokes whatever emotion that they need it to. But also, I hope that, you know, maybe it can, you know, find some folks that again aren't typically, you know, jazz fans, and maybe offer them, you know, a branch to come over into our world, and see, you know, what we have to offer.
So, take me back to the beginnings of your life. Where were you born and raised? How did music and more specifically jazz become your life?
Okay, I was born in a tiny town in Virginia, Danville, Virginia, which is right on the border of Virginia, North Carolina. But I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, which is, yeah, they call it the Triangle area. If you're not familiar with it, it's Durham, North, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill, are all kind of bordering each other. It's a pretty, you know, medium sized metropolitan area in north central North Carolina, and I grew up. Not, I mean, music was always around. My mom loved music, and you know, my brother played trombone in the concert band. My mom played flute in the marching band, but it wasn't. I wasn't surrounded by professional musicians. I wasn't, you know, really even interested in doing anything with music until I got to high school, and my mom really was pushing me to focus on music to help, because I was doing a lot of dumb stuff and getting in some trouble. My mom really thought that music could help me stay focused and hone in, and that's when I joined the band. And I honestly, I thought drums would be the easiest thing. I didn't want to do it, so I thought drums would be the easiest instrument to learn because you don't have to learn all these scales, and you know, which is what all of that was not true. It's not easy, and you have to learn all the same theoretical stuff as everybody else, or you should at least. And then my and the first music I was really into was fusion music. I really got into funk and fusion. You know, people like Dennis Chambers, Billy Cobham, Narada Michael Walden, Alphonse Mouzon. You know, the drummers of the 70s there, My Vision Orchestra and Returner Forever, and you know, Tony Williams' Lifetime, and through Tony Williams, I actually started being curious about jazz, and I was lucky that my junior year of high school we got a new band director that happened to be a jazz trumpet player, and he was very instrumental in me really learning about active listening, transcribing, letting me sit in on gigs he was playing at, and you know, I just kind of as soon as I really was exposed to, you know, what jazz really is, and in its purest form, I really just fell in love with it, and just have been trying to work on it ever since.
What was the first live show you saw, jazz or otherwise, that blew you away, that made you think, I want to do that one day?
I think, oddly enough, it was probably seeing Carter Beauford play with Dave Matthews Band, which is an interesting answer. But and I was not into. I got free tickets when I was in high school from a radio station, one of those call-in things, and originally it was going to be Metallica, but they got canceled. That show got canceled, so they gave us tickets, me and my brother, to go see Dave Matthews Band, and I was not into that at all. But I said, it's a free ticket, so I went to go see it, and I had just got my first drum set a few months prior to that, and I went, and again, stylistically, it was not what I was into at all, but seeing somebody, I mean, play the instrument with that level of facility and pocket and groove, that got me excited about playing just drums and seeing what kind of impact they could have. And then the first jazz show I saw that really got me excited about doing that professionally, when Art Harper came through the Triangle and did some stuff at one of the local universities, and I saw him play at a nightclub. I actually kind of had to sneak into the nightclub because it was 21 and up, but I was able to get in and see one of the sets, and that really blew me away.
I've seen Dave Matthews a few times. Carter's, man, he's like Neil Peart. He's got just
Yes,
drums all around him. His technical ability, he's like Michael Jordan on the drum kit. It's free flowing, it's effervescent, and it's just like he doesn't stop. When you think he's hit a wall, he'll go do something else, you know.
yes,
So it's
definitely.
so. Let me ask you this: after all of this time, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day?
I think the feeling that playing live in front of people, there's several aspects of that. I think the feeling you get when you're playing with a group, especially if it's a group that everyone is dedicated to a similar vision of what sound concept they're trying to deal with, and feeling that level of familiarity and brotherhood or sisterhood with the people that you're playing with, feeling that level of connection, and then kind of attached to that is having that connection with the audience that you're playing for, and realizing that there's this very symbiotic relationship with the band and the audience, and all live music, but I think more specifically with jazz music, because of the improvisatory nature of it, that the band is really feeding off the audience and vice versa, and being able to play for somebody and have them, whether that's a therapeutic aspect with regards to if somebody's going through a tough time in their life, or if it's celebratory, somebody's anniversary, or we're Valentine's Day, whatever that is, being able to make an impact in some kind of way positively for someone through the art form, is there's really no other feeling like it. When you're doing that in the moment, that's what I fell in love with, and then on top of that, it's can be very therapeutic for me to go out and play and express myself, through the instrument, through the medium of jazz.
So the one thing about music in general, but more specifically jazz, is that there's this eternal baton that's getting passed from one generation to the next. The elders teach the younger cats. So in your life, you've been around accomplished musicians like Jason Marsalis, Greg Tardy, Eric Reed, Marcus Roberts, a lot of cats. What have you learned from them that you in turn try to teach younger musicians that you get around?
I think tons. I've learned from them. Um, it's interesting, I think with each person, there's things that I picked up specifically from them. I mean, I think anybody that is serious about this music that's trying to teach or mentor, a lot of the messaging for the most part is going to be similar in terms of the content with, checking out the records, and you got to practice and you got to listen, and those types of things. But then there's some specific things about each person, with somebody like Marcus Roberts. I've never been around a musician in any capacity that is more serious about the craft of making music than Marcus Roberts. Again, that's just been my experience, but I've been around a lot of people. I mean, he is so dedicated to practice, even to this day. A lot of cats, when they're at his stature and have played with everybody and sold records and been on major labels, and he was on 60 Minutes, did some. I mean, they don't really actively practice anymore, at least not like they did previously. If you talk to him, he's still hungry like he was probably when he was 15 years old. I mean, he still talks about things that he needs to practice and work on and improve. With Jason Marsalis, he is somebody that he is always listening to different kinds of music, trying to find inspiration. And so with him, it was being very open to things that even maybe, musically were not things that I preferred to listen to, but trying to figure out, what I can get from that. What can I draw inspiration from? Greg Tardy is, as great of a player he is, he's probably an even better human being. He's just one of the nicest, most generous, humble, giving cats, that I've ever met. And, just what I get from him is what I've gotten from him is just being a good person at the end of the day. Almost like some non-musical stuff. Eric Reed has been a great mentor for me as well. And he's somebody that is very demanding of the cats in his band, but it's about not ever taking like even a note off, kind of staying focused and being present in what you're doing. And there's many other people that I've been mentored and influenced by, and I hopefully what I can give to younger cats is pulling from all of those people that I got from, and able to pass that along. Because like you said, I mean, without the mentorship aspect of the music, even I went to school for jazz, and it was great, but there's so much about this music that still has to be kind of like a word of mouth type of thing. You just can't do it in a classroom because it's not academic. There's some things that can be processed academically or taught academically, but a lot of it has to be learned in kind of one-to-one situations, or situations in the bandstand or after the gig at a hang, at some cafe or diner at 3:00 in the morning, and that's where the stuff is passed down on. So that's something that's very important to me. I'm always seeking mentorship. There's been times where I've sought it out and have been turned away or pushed away or not acknowledged, and that's another thing that I try to always be as much as I can available for younger cats, because I know the times that I've tried to, seek that from people and, have been, pushed away, that hurt me a lot, especially from people that I really respected and really looked up to. And when they weren't willing to, kind of give of themselves at all, yeah, that could have been very detrimental to me had I not kind of been able to rationalize that, for whatever reason, whether they're just not interested or not willing or not able, they're not going to do it. But I try to make myself, like I said, be available to younger cats with whatever they need or whatever I can give.
So, Dave, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, colleagues, fans, everyone around you. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Wow, it's an interesting one. So I think I'm a complex person, and I'm actually proud of that. I think there's many different facets to me. Some are things that I'm proud of. Some are things that I'm not so proud of and trying to work on. I think I'm trying to be the best version of myself that I can on a daily basis. And again, sometimes I'm more successful with that than others. But I hope that I perceive myself as somebody that's constantly trying to push myself again to be, the best that I can be. But also, I have my faults, and that's something that as I get older, I know I try to cut myself slack and realize that I'm a human being sometimes too, because I can get into a very perfectionist type of mentality. But I hope that others perceive me the same way, that I'm just like everybody else in a lot of ways, and that I'm not perfect, but I do try my hardest to be better than I was the yesterday.
I dig it. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of Retro Groove that will benefit you the best or catch you live, any of the good business, where do they go?
They would go primarily to my website. I think would be the most direct way, which is www.davepottermusic.com. That has a store with all of my recordings in it, other merchandise. It has dates that I'll be touring, and times, locations, all that stuff. I'm also on social media, on Instagram, Dave Potter Music. I'm on Facebook. I don't use Twitter, X that much, but I do have an account on there. I think it's D Potter Swing. But, primarily my website. And then the new record is out on all of the streaming platforms and for download and or just regular streaming. So it's out there.
All right, man. Dave, this has been great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too, man. Before